All right, I'm pretty excited about this one. This is going to be the found link. It's a Kelly Gallup pattern, and that's kind of what we're going to end up with when we're all said and done here. The reason why I'm excited about it is pretty simple. It looks like a fantastic fly. It looks really functional. According to Gallup, it absolutely just hammers fish. So it should be really productive. I get a little, I don't know, when I see some of these flies on like Instagram and stuff, and you know, it's a dry fly, but it's loaded with like wire and water absorbing material and just things that don't float. It's all just strange to me. But this fly looks really functional, looks like it's really effective, and you can change the color up to fit any mayfly you want. This one I'm going to do in a Hendrickson. So it's a little bit of a bigger hook size. It's better for the camera, so I'm going to do it in a Hendrickson. But I'm loading my box with these in sulfur because we have a pretty heavy hatch on the Delaware that goes all year that I'm going to fish these on. The Hendricksons are going to be starting pretty soon, so I should be able to see how these do pretty quickly. So this is a size 12 dry fly hook, and I've got some Blue Dun UTC 70 that I'm going to use. I do want to use a round thread instead of a flat thread, but I got an order coming in from Vivus that's not here yet, but this thread will do just fine. So what I want to do is I want to measure a little bit more than halfway down the hook shank, and that's where I'm going to start my thread. And I want to use my thread to measure out my proportions. That way I can nail them every single time and I won't overshoot it with material. It's just a lot easier. So I'm going to get a little bit of a wrap here to get things going. First material I'm going to tie in is some of this CDL from a tailing pack. I don't know if you do or do not have a tailing pack from Whiting, but if you do not, I would highly recommend that you get one. These are excellent fibers, excellent tailing fibers, and in each package you get a ton of them. These have great coloration, and I'm going to extend that pretty far off the back. I want a fairly long tail on this. And I'm going to cinch those in nice and tight. And we're good. I'm going to run my thread back up to the tie-in point. And I'm not going to go over that, which I'll explain why in a minute. I want to make sure that I have that bare shank exposed. I'd like those to splay a little bit more. They're kind of, I got those from the top of the quill. They kind of stick together a little bit, but they'll splay out. Okay, so see in the front here how we have that bare hook shank? That is there for a couple of reasons. The primary reason that it's there is obviously I want to measure out the length of my thorax, but it's also there because the next step is going to require me to spin a little bit of deer hair. And this spinning process will work a lot better if you have a bare hook shank. It'll spin right around, no problem at all. So the hair that I'm using here is a certain type of hair. It is a short, fine deer hair. Now, I don't have a brand or anything for you. This is a patch I found at a fly show. Just some guy that was there selling a bunch of materials, and he had a really, really nice patch. Really, really good quality, and it was only $4, so I grabbed it. If you don't have any short, fine hair, I'm sorry, I'm just stacking this. If you don't have any short, fine hair, the good thing that you can find in a fly shop is hair for X-Caddis. I know that Nature's Spirit does make a specific X-Caddis hair. So if you find that, that's pretty much exactly what I'm using. And what you're going to want to do with this stuff, or any deer hair really, when you work with it, is you want to try to get as much of this debris out of here as you can. You know, this hair has got all kinds of fuzz and all kinds of things inside it. And not only is that going to affect flotation, because that stuff all gathers water, but it also doesn't tie in the same. It'll affect your ability to spin it, and so you want to make sure that's cleaned out as good as you can possibly get it. So I'm going to line this up. I want those tips to extend just a little bit past the bend of the hook. So I'm going to transfer my grip to my left hand, and I'm going to take my scissors, I'm going to run them up, and just snip that right off. Get a lot of that excess off. Now with my thread, when I make my wrap, I want my thread to point back that way. So I'm going to spin it counterclockwise. And I'm just going to let that coil up a little bit. Now when I spin it, see how it wants to go towards the back of the hook? That's what I want. So I'm going to place that right on the bare shank. I'm going to get one loose wrap just to gather all the fibers, pinch down a little bit just to gather them. Then on my second wrap, as I come towards me, I'm going to start applying some pressure. I'm going to let go, and that hair should spin right around the shank. And I'm going to hold on to the eye just to brace it a little bit and just apply steady pressure. And there you go. You should get that little sunburst there. Get everything right where it should be, and I'll tighten it down. And we're looking good. Okay. All right, let me get some of the... I want to get some tighter wraps in there to make sure that that doesn't move around on me. Now what I also do is, that sunburst is something you would want on like an elk hair caddis, but I've got some work to do in front of it. So I'm going to slip some fine point scissors in here, and I'm just going to kind of shave some of that off. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I want to try to save on bulk in the thorax area. I got a lot going on and a lot to tie in, and if I can save a little bit of bulk by getting rid of some of this excess, that's going to be a good thing. So now I'm going to run my thread right over the top of it, and that should lock everything right in. And we're good. All right, so we're going to do two things in this next step. First thing I want to do is I want to gather these fibers. So I'm going to pinch it vertically, then I'm going to pinch it horizontally, and then I'm just going to kind of finagle it a little bit so that all of those fibers are just sticking straight off the back. And then the next thing I'm going to do is, this is why I want a round thread, not a flat thread, but you can make a flat thread a round thread by spinning it. So I'm going to spin my thread again. I'm going to get that coiled up, and what we want to do is we want to make soft, light, loose wraps down our body to gather that deer hair and keep it all in one spot. And when you get to the very, very back, we're going to pinch down and tie that in a little bit tighter, and then we'll make our way back up. Now it's really important on this step that you keep those wraps light. And the reason why you want to keep them light is because that deer hair is really buoyant. You got air pockets in there. You don't want to mess with that stuff. You want to make sure that that's staying the way it is, because that's your flotation. All right. So move this up a little bit. All right, so the next material that I'm going to tie in, I'm going to have to clip some more of this off. The original pattern calls for Zelon. I don't have Zelon, but that's really not that big of a deal. I use something that I actually kind of like a little bit better. I don't know if you're familiar with the Enrique Puglisi line of materials, but he's got a very Zelon-like material called trigger point fibers. And that's what I'm going to use here. So I'm going to use this in a gray. That's kind of what it looks like. Completely just, I mean, repels water like crazy. I mean, this is an excellent dry fly material. So I'm going to take a clump of that, and I'm going to come up from the back, and I'm going to get that tied in right about there. I like to move that back a little bit. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, move that back a little bit. I was a little bit closer to the eye than I wanted to be, but what are you going to do? Get that spun again. Okay. All right, so we'll bring that in from the back. Thread wants to keep moving on me. All right, right there. Don't go anywhere. Let's get that wrapped in. All right, so now what we're going to do, obviously we don't want our wings going this way, so we're going to twist them. I'm going to tie this one back by going over the top, and we're just going to do a figure 8 pattern here through the middle. And we're going to get these wings to splay out the way that we want. Get that tied in there nice. Get that over on the other side. Once you get a few figure 8s in here, that's not going to go anywhere. It'll stay right there. Okay, so I'm not going to trim them the way I want them to ultimately look, but now I'm going to just trim them to length, just to make sure that I don't have a bunch of excess material in my way. And we're gonna clean those wings up a little bit later. That'll be our final step. So I'm going to move my thread behind them, and I am going to load this up with some Blue Dun, what am I talking about? With some dark Hendrickson dry fly dubbing. Just get a nice noodle of that going. And all I want to do is I want to cover up all of my thread wraps. I want to cover up my figure 8. I want to build that thorax, the color of the mayfly that I'm trying to represent. So if you're doing a sulfur, you know, use the appropriate dubbing for that, a drake or whatever it is that you're doing. This is where you can really mix up and match whatever kind of mayfly, whatever kind of hatch you want to fish. So I'm just going to get some wraps behind there. Then I'm going to redo my figure 8, get all that covered up in dubbing. I want the bottom of this to have that nice mayfly profile. And I want to leave a little bit of room at the head for the final step. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my deer hair patch, and I'm going to cut off another chunk, maybe a little less deer hair than I used before. But I'm going to take a minute, get that cleaned out, make sure you get all that fuzz out of there, get it cleaned up the best you can, and get that in a stacker. And I don't know what kind of stacker you're using, but a small stacker is obviously going to be more ideal for this. If this is really short, fine hair, so if you're using a really large stacker, then you might have a problem. These might not align properly. So try to get yourself a small stacker for this type of hair. Oh, I kind of skipped a step here. What I want to do is I want to shape these wings now. And the reason why I want to shape them now is when I do the final step, I don't want to have to mess with them because I'm going to have a bunch of deer hair in there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to about the halfway point. I'm going to open my scissors. I'm going to go straight down, and then I'm going to angle it back a little bit. And I'm just going to snip that. And then I'm going to take off that corner there, and I just kind of want to angle that a little bit and shape them a little bit more like mayfly wings. There, then make my second cut. And those will flare out. It actually really wasn't the best job of shaping those. You know what? Whatever. Got some stray fibers down here. You can see the way you get a bunch of stray fibers. That's kind of why you want to make sure that you kind of clean that up before you get the deer hair in there. could make it a nightmare. Okay, so get those out of the way. I've got a chunk of deer hair here all stacked, ready to go. So I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to do one more pass and try to get some butt ends and some fuzz. And oh, I got a few butt ends in there. Let's get those out of there. And I always stack a little bit more than what I need, because when I see this stuff, I rip it right out. And we're good. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take these, I'm going to line them up. I want them just about there, right about where that tail starts. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to transfer my grip to my left hand. I'm going to come in, snip all that right off. Same procedure, spin my thread. Stroke everything back with the hand that you're holding the hair with. Loose wrap. As you apply pressure, you can see that bunch starting to build. And continue to take wraps with good pressure. I was just about to say, try not to snap your thread. I was just about to say that. All right, let me get out of there. I'll restart it. I would pause the video, but I don't know. I'll show you how I redo my thread here. I can't believe I just did that. I swear I was a second away from saying apply steady pressure, try not to break your thread. And the second I was about to say it, there it goes. Okay. So what I do is I don't have a lot of room here, so I'm just going to take a pair of these hackle pliers and just put them on that loose strand just to give it some weight. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this and my tag end, and I'm going to just restart my thread, and I'm going to wrap it right over my tag. And pretty quickly, we're right back in business. That out of there. All right, clean that eye up a little bit. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to pause this for a second. All right, we're back at it. I just didn't want to have a bunch of dead air as I redid my deer hair. So we're kind of back in business here. So again, I'm going to line up those tips, get those all ready to go, transfer my grip. We're going to snip that. Same thing, let's stroke everything back, get the deer hair right on the head. Get a good tight wrap. If my thread breaks again, I'm retiring. This will be my last video. And we'll get some nice tight wraps, lock that in place. Now one more quick thing before we whip finish this is I'm just going to apply a little bit more dubbing to my thread. And the only reason why I want to do that is because I'm wrapping bare thread right now. You can see on the bottom of this fly, you can see the thread there. I want to cover that with dubbing. I want that to be a nice uniform underbody. So I'm going to go in, get some wraps there, and then I'll finish with bare thread wraps in front of the deer hair. So slip that in there, hold that deer hair back, and we'll get a nice whip finish in there. And that right there is all she wrote. So let's get those wings back where we want them. I got a button in my deer hair right here. I don't like that. And that is pretty much it. That is the found link. This is a Kelly Gallup pattern. I have not fished it yet. He seems to swear by it. It certainly is going to float. I can tell that just by looking at it. It's a really, really cool pattern. Really imitates a mayfly really well. You can switch up the colors, match it up for any hatch you're doing. It's a really cool fly. I'm excited to fish it. I haven't fished it yet, but I'm going to fish it during the Hendrickson hatch, and I've got a load of sulfurs ready to go. So really cool fly. So it's new to me. We'll see how it does. If you have any questions or anything, just leave them in the comments. I'll get right back to you.